Hey there, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. I've got another thought for you that's a little bit deeper maybe, or a reminder of something you already have felt or known, but it has to do with following your intuition, listening to that whispering voice, that thought, that idea that comes to you that is random and that doesn't make sense, but it feels right at a deep level. Now, let me just point this out. If you listen to my last podcast on Words Will Kill You, or the power of words, listen, that same meeting that I was at, we were talking about productivity in terms of just being a more effective salesperson, in terms of using your time wisely, measuring your results, setting new goals, those kinds of things. But as part of it, there was another clip where I went off script that I thought I would share with you here, because I ended up sharing a really personal story and I thought you would enjoy it. And it's what I call my Moses moment as a dad, and following that intuition that, came true. And I just wanted to share that story with you, although you might think I'm a little weird. But let me tell you, if you will follow your intuition, that little voice inside. Oh, okay, I won't say anymore. Let's jump right into the audio. I shared this, and it started off by, I asked the question, hey, what are attributes or qualities that highly successful salespeople have? Something like that. And then people start throwing things out like they're results driven, they're, positive, they're confident. And then one person said they're bold. And I said, hey, explain that. What do you mean by being bold? And as we got into it, as you will hear, I answer that, and then I share my little Moses moment that I thought was pretty interesting. And maybe it might be at a human experiential level a good reminder for you. Okay, here we go. Good. Yeah, okay. Now let me change the question and ask you this. When you think of a highly successful and professional salesperson, what qualities or attributes come to mind?
Someone who's open.
Okay. Open, okay.
Motivated.
Hard-working.
Hard-working. Someone says
Task-focused.
Yeah.
Efficient.
Detailed, efficient, organized.
Bold.
Who said that?
Me.
When you think of, I'm just curious. When you think of bold,
Salesperson, like being bold to speak to people, taking it, it's like sales is communication with people. You have to be bold in that sense.
so but how would you define bold? I agree with you, but how would you define being bold?
Going outside your comfort zone.
Totally. Like having the courage. Like, how many times have you been, and I'll go to you in just a second, Don, how many times have you been talking with a client or a potential customer, and in the back of your mind, you have this weird, like, I should ask this question kind of a thought. How many of you have ever had that? By show of hands, in your lifetime of sales, how many of you have had that thought, got to the end of the presentation, the person walked out, and you never asked that question? Okay, for sure, right? How many of you, in your own experience, you probably can't put a finger on it, but in your experience, you know that there has been those times where you had that thought, you totally asked that question, and it was the game changer during that sales process? Raise of hands. Totally. I think you have a point here, Alex, and that is, listen to your thoughts, the quiet whispers. I don't know where they come from, but it's almost like the law of transference, right? When you have these little thoughts like, hey, ask about this, or be curious about this, or whatever, I'm telling you, trust that weird thought. I agree. Be bold. Be bold enough to step outside of your comfort zone and do that. Let me tell you a quick story. I don't think I've shared this story with you guys before, and you're going to think I'm weird. My son's junior year of high school, I think it was a sophomore or junior, it doesn't matter. He's a wrestler. Many of you, because I've been here long enough, know he went to state 3 times or whatever. So 2 weeks into that year of wrestling, I'm going to just say it was his junior year. 2 weeks into the wrestling, he was doing a takedown. A guy somehow twisted his ankle, literally broke the ankle. Bryce was out of wrestling for 6 weeks. A week and a half before the beginning of districts, regionals, and then state, the doctors clear him to wrestle. So of course the coaches are concerned that they'll re-aggravate it. So the coaches wrestle him for about a week to get him back into conditioning, and really they were mindful and mature enough to just be aware of that ankle. So he goes into districts and he ends up winning, no problem. But now the next week is regionals, and he told me the night before, a couple days before, I'm really nervous about this. We have people from Lake Stevens who are like top-notch wrestlers. He knew who the wrestlers were, and he had to get through regionals to get to state. And he really wanted to get to state. But he was worried, all they gotta do is grab that ankle, twist it, it'll limit his ability. So the morning comes, we're driving up somewhere up north in Seattle. My car's behind the bus because they want my son on the bus with the other wrestlers. But I'm driving behind. And as I'm driving on I-5, I have this thought, TJ, tell Bryce as he's sitting there on the bus, so text him basically, as he's on the bus, if he will take the cap off his water bottle, pour the water in the cap, and drink it, he will win first place at regionals. How many of you guys think that's weird?
Not at all.
So I said, that's a stupid thought. I don't want to set him up for failure. But the voice came back to me and said, tell him. So I texted him, Bryce, because I speak in my phone as I text. Yeah. So I go, Bryce, period. I promise you that if you pour the water into the cap of the water bottle and drink from the cap, you will win. I promise you, you will win first place at regionals. We get there about an hour and a half early. They have to do weigh-in and all that stuff. He comes and sits up in the stands where I'm sitting. He leans against me. About 5 minutes later, I get the courage to ask him, did you drink out of the cap of the water bottle? He looks up at me. He says, of course I did, Dad. Let me tell you, he not only won first in that tournament, he went on into state and won second in state. Have there been times where I have followed intuition and feelings that didn't go right? Of course, because I'm a human being, I have weaknesses, so forth. But I have found, and I wasn't planning on sharing any of this today, but I have found that if you follow that instinct wherever you're at in life, that thought, that whispering voice, whatever it is, doors will open for you, I promise. All right. So what'd you think? That's pretty bold, isn't it? I mean, that's pretty crazy, but I have just found in my life when I act on those random thoughts, assuming they are good and they feel right, and I don't mean feel right from a sense of I know this is going to work out, because a lot of times you are acting on these impressions not knowing the outcome, just simply having faith that the outcome will turn out okay. But deep down, you know that it's not harmful. You know it's not going to harm another person. It's not going to harm yourself. So that's a critical element to it. But I'm telling you, if you will follow that intuition in your life, I don't know if you're a leader, I don't know with your kids, maybe you're working at work one day and you're having an issue with one of your children, and this thought comes to you that says, you should take him to Dairy Queen, or you should go get him an ice cream cone today. And you're like, why would I do that? They don't need more sugar. Or why would I do that? That just seems so random, right? He needs to get his homework done, or she needs to get her homework done. Well, let me tell you something. If that thought comes to you and it sort of feels right, even though it's a little bit of a stretch, it's out of the box a little bit, and you act on it, you say, hey, let's get in the car. I want to take you and go get some ice cream. Not only will they freak out, but you don't know what conversation can come out of that. You don't know how they may open up their heart to you. And it's the same with leadership. Maybe in your workplace, there might be a thought that comes to your mind to do something a specific way or work with an individual a certain way, and you think, wow, or to ask a certain question that you're like, oh, that is bold. There's no way I'm asking that question. But let me tell you something. You can ask those tough questions if you will lower the tone of your voice, if you will slow down, and if you will come across as though you are sincere and that you truly care. And if you can come across like that, you can almost ask any question. And one thing you can do on top of that is you can pre-frame it, like say this, by softening it, by saying, I've got a question for you. It's a little bit different, but I've got a question for you. And you know what? Most people will respond okay if they feel that you really care. And so that's a little reminder for you in this podcast. Follow that intuition. You know, one of the things that I do is private coaching for executives. And this came up the other day on one of my coaching calls where I was working with this executive. And one of the things we do when we begin our coaching calls and so forth, when we begin the process, we do a real comprehensive assessment on them, which focuses on their strengths and their weaknesses, their tendencies and so forth. And wow, it is an eye-opener. And not one person that I've done this with or coached with doesn't say, wow, that is me to a T. And one of the things on this gentleman that I was talking to is there's a quadrant which has to do with intuition, following your intuition. And it's balanced against predicting hazards or problems. And one thing he's really good with is he can see pitfalls really easily. Or in other words, he likes to see from beginning to end. He loves that certainty to know how things are going to work out. And his intuition level was really low, so it wasn't in balance. And so the key to living a successful life and being an effective leader and being an effective parent or what have you, you've got to balance some of these things out. But those two things were going against each other. And I said, here's what we got to do. We've got to increase your ability to listen and to follow through on your intuition. And so I gave some homework. Number one, I said for the next 2 weeks before our next phone call, I want you to recognize those little whisperings, those little soft voices, or depending on how you hear it or feel it, right? Some people hear it through words, internal words, auditory voices. Some people hear or they feel things. That's how I roll. I'm very kinesthetic. So I will feel a thought that I need to act on. Okay, and so you have to know which modality works best for you. But as you go throughout the next 2 weeks, I told this gentleman, hey, I just want you to notice as you're working on things, the random thoughts that come to your mind, and I just want you to make note of them, write them down. And where it feels appropriate, I want you, and it may feel a little bit bold, it takes courage, I want you to act on it. And then write down what happened once you acted on it. Now, here's what I know is going to happen. Because he hasn't had a whole lot of experience with this, it registers low in his matrix, if you will. He's going to start seeing that many things work out. That there's a point, I told him, where you have to trust the unknown. There's a point where you have to trust the process in life, and you got to be willing to follow your heart. That's one of my points of success as a speaker is people write down all the information they want to share and then they forget to follow their heart. You've got to be able to follow your heart without using your paper with notes on it as a crutch. Following your heart is what connects with people. And sometimes when you follow your heart, you think, well, that's really weird. Why would I say that? Why would I do that? But let me tell you something, 9 times out of 10, it will work out well. And I'm sure with this executive, he's going to share me experiences that really worked out well. And I look so forward to visiting with him. By the way, if you would like some private coaching and you can do it, let me tell you something. I would be happy to work one-on-one with you and help you get to that next level in your business or in your personal life and in your relationships. All right. I wish you the very best, and I hope that this particular podcast was meaningful to you, a good reminder to listen to that soft whisper voice in whatever form it comes in, and then have the courage to follow it. All right. I wish you the best. May the best of your past be the worst of your future. Now go out there and unleash your greatness within. Hey there, thanks for taking the time out to listen to my podcast. I want you to know that I am grateful that you are a part of my community, and I hope that you're getting a lot out of my various podcast episodes. You see, it is my goal to provide you with those slide edge principles, strategies, and inspiration that can help you achieve your goals and your dreams. My one request is, if you enjoy my podcast in general, or you have listened to an episode that you really liked, could you do me a favor? It would mean the world to me if you could write a simple review, or if you could simply give me a star rating. I would really appreciate it. Now go out there and unleash your greatness within.
GreatnessWithin.com